unfortunately, we've had another shooting in Minneapolis involving a federal officer. This one was the Border Patrol. So we're going to kind of walk through that. Connor, I'm glad to have you. Sorry it's under these circumstances. Again, it's never a positive thing when anyone loses their life, much less at the hands of a police officer. I'm going to just go into kind of like my view of it from a law enforcement standpoint. There's a lot of people that talk about a lot of different things. I think what's interesting to me is kind of the people that have come together on this one. A lot of the Second Amendment.
You want to give a quick background just on the off chance someone doesn't know what we're talking about?
All right. Yeah. So we'll go into the background. The other night during a border or a operation for a illegal, they were going to pick up, had some significant charges. They go to pick them up. Mr. If I pronounce it wrong, I think it's Pretti, isn't it?
Pretti or Pretti, yeah.
Pretti. Anyway,
Alex, you can call him Alex. First name.
So Alex was filming. You hear a lot of whistles. You hear a lot of other things going on. At some point, the agents directed their attention towards him, and I think it was him and two other people, if I'm not mistaken.
It ended up being
3 or 4 people. But anyway, agent goes towards them, sprays them with a looked like a fairly significant size can of pepper spray. Tried to spray them. There was a scramble, I guess, for lack of a better word. He ends up on the ground with the agents trying to get control of him, and at some point, a gun was produced. Depending on who you talk to and the video, a gun was produced at some point. I believe the video shows actually a federal agent was actually the one that took that off his person.
Correct.
Right about the same time, you hear the agent, I think, that engaged them, or one of the other agents yelled gun, and Mr. Pretti was subsequently shot and died on scene. So that's kind of what happened. I think from my standpoint, from a law enforcement standpoint, having been in those encounters, what I would tell people is think about a physical altercation. If you've never been in one, it's not as clean as you think it is, and there's a lot of things that happen during those altercations. I think we're quick to judge people on. We have professional, like what I compare it to is we have professional athletes that are trained to do a number of different things. We have instant replay that plays it back, and even with all that professionalism and what they see, there are times where you can't make a determination as to what the camera actually shows as far as timing and everything else. Because I think one of the things that really helped us with the Renee Good section, the shooting, was that you had it from the officer's perspective. I've not seen any videos that show it from any of the officers involved's perspective. I think that does matter. I think what they perceived has a lot to do with it. So what I would say is, from my standpoint, from a law enforcement standpoint, just what the code says, you have. I feel like we want to talk about what the agents did, but what we forget is what brought them to that situation. And like from my standpoint, what brought them to that situation is you have somebody that is actively engaging with. I read something today that they actually had a running. I don't know what way to look at it, but basically they had a group of people that was doing nothing, which this gentleman was a part of, but following ICE agents, and they're telling them where the ICE agents are. They're putting out what the agents are driving, all these different things, so making their jobs more difficult. And in the course of all that, like I said, I feel like what's missing this is you have a gentleman that made the decision to go to a protest armed. And I'm just going to tell it from my standpoint, having worked in an undercover capacity, in a plainclothes capacity. There's one of the first things that they tell us as police officers are, when someone shows up on scene that is in uniform, you will take the commands that they give you, because it's an excited situation there's already been a violent encounter. You were in the middle of it. They don't have context. So even for us working in law enforcement in an undercover capacity, or even in a capacity where we're in plain clothes, we still defer to people in uniform. And I think that's what's missed in this whole situation is people. I understand. I think when we talked about it, I feel like this gentleman had a lot of different choices. The first choice that I feel like he made that was a bad decision, obviously, is to participate in something that interrupts a law enforcement activity. You can disagree with the activity, but going and following agents around. I saw a meme. It wasn't like I think about it in the same way, and that is you have all these signs posted around the national parks. Don't mess with the bison. Because they in the heat of the moment they look like they're passive, but like they can become aggressive. In the same way, I don't think it's ever a good idea to interfere with law enforcement because, like, from my standpoint, they have a job to do. If you don't like the way they're doing their job, there are a lot of ways there are a number of ways to have a recourse in dealing with that. So, like, from my standpoint, first mistake, number one, is like going after law enforcement while they're trying to do what they have been. Let me just ask you this: do you feel like what's going on in Minnesota? Do you feel like picking up people here that are charged with crimes? Is that a legal? Is that a lawful function for ICE to remove people that have been charged with crimes?
Yeah. Yes. If it's immigration, yeah, because that's immigration and customs enforcement is what ICE does. I'm still not super clear overall on what like the exact parameters of ICE's jurisdiction is. Like, depending on where you look, it's like a lot of things, there's enough gray area where it's, ICE doesn't have the right to remove a US citizen from their vehicle. But then it's if there's probable cause to think that they're doing something affiliated with immigration, they can. So there's these workarounds for everything.
All right, well, let's pause with that. So it's your understanding that if ICE has a lawful purpose, and their lawful purpose, if I'm understanding you correctly, is to remove people here that fall under the criteria. They are to take people into custody that fall under a certain criteria and move them into custody and make a determination as to whether they're removed from the country or not. Is that correct?
My understanding is that, so in an overly simplified term, ICE are not police. They are immigration enforcement. They do not have the same jurisdiction as police localities. They don't have the same jurisdiction as the FBI or even the ATF or DEA. Their exclusive focus is immigration enforcement. So as US citizens, there are certain things that they cannot do to us because we are US citizens. Their jurisdiction does not apply to us as
I think there's two different things. There's jurisdiction, but there's also 100% they're law enforcement because they are charged.
No, they're law enforcement, but they're not state troopers. They're not,
Well, and yes, they're not, but you can't put them in a box. From what I know of law enforcement is 100%. Like, I have a jurisdiction that I work in. If I go outside of that jurisdiction, unless we have some kind of an agreement, I don't have jurisdiction. That's one of the biggest things. And I think that's where we're missing the point is ICE has jurisdiction over immigration. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. And so, but we, through the US code, give them the ability to conduct these operations to determine. So what I'm saying is,
for instance, so I just, for the sake of this, just Googled what jurisdiction does ICE have over US citizens. And the real quick AI overview on Google or whatever is ICE generally has no jurisdiction to detain or deport US citizens for civil immigration violations, as their authority is limited to non-citizens.
All right,
However,
stop.
ICE agents can briefly stop or detain citizens if they have reasonable suspicion of a crime, or if the citizen interferes with an arrest, assaults an officer, or if citizenship cannot be immediately verified.
All right, so let's just take that video, the first half. Whatever the ICE agent did, we don't know what he said. We don't know if he said, hey, you're under arrest or anything else. What we do know is that there was an interaction between him. Do you feel like, based on what you've seen with the video, do you feel like he was avoiding being detained?
The individual?
The gentleman that got shot, was he resisting what they were trying to do?
No.
Okay, so let me ask you this: like, let's talk about.
I also think ICE had no justification to detain him in the first place.
Read the second half of what that says. It says, or obstruct.
It says they have reasonable suspicion of a crime, or if the citizen interferes with an arrest, assaults an officer, or a citizen cannot immediately citizenship cannot be immediately verified. So I know the point. The line you're going to pull is if a citizen interferes with an arrest. This individual was not interfering with an arrest, and ICE even put out their own memo.
We don't know if he's interfering in an arrest, because what we're saying, what the code says, my understanding of federal code is he is interfering. Like, I understand we have the goal of ICE is to go out and arrest people that are here illegally. If a U.S. citizen interferes with that arrest, they can be charged for a felony for obstructing what that ICE agent is doing.
And so that's my point, is that we're at a point where that interference, if we take one thing out of what's happening in Minneapolis right now, and Minnesota in general with ICE, there needs to be less gray area with what defines interference, because ICE themselves put out a memo that said yelling, making noise, being disruptive, vulgarity, name calling, all this stuff does not warrant is not considered interference. Filming is not considered interference. That's from them. So if he's just standing in the street filming, saying, hey, stop, you POS, like, get out of here, we don't want you here, like, what do you, like, any of that, their own policy is that is not interference. Interference to me would mean going over and trying to pull an officer off, or trying to get the guy and help him escape, or like physically getting involved in the arrest. Standing 50 feet away saying, hey, stop, or not saying anything at all, because from a lot of the videos it doesn't look like he says anything until the ICE officer gets in his face.
Okay, so let's talk about interference. The purpose of the whistles and everything else is to do what?
Draw attention to ICE being in the area.
To alert who?
Anyone. Immigrants, illegals, anyone who's but the problem with that, yes, you're right, like, it is interfering with an arrest because you're alerting people.
The whole purpose of what they were doing is to follow these ICE agents around, identify what they're driving, and make people aware that they're in the area, to include people that are here illegally, who have at a very minimum, like, you are alerting. Like, think about it like this, because hindsight's 2020. Like, if you don't know, we don't know what some of the targets of these investigations are. But what we do know is they have deported people, and they have taken people into custody that have been charged with some very serious crimes, and some of them are sexual assaults, things like that. And so, like, from my standpoint, for me, what makes people think, hey, it's a good idea to alert someone who is involved in criminal activity, who has been charged with a crime? Why are we alerting them? Like, I think that's where my side has the biggest problem, because here's the thing. For me, like we talked about it before, nobody marched or said anything when that police officer killed that woman at the Capitol.
Correct. Nobody
marched. Nobody said anything about it. Correct. Nobody marched when Lincoln Riley was killed, in Georgia. Like, nobody. And so what it looks like from the other side is, it looks like we are putting I understand two United States citizens have died as a result of ICE operations in Minneapolis. Both of them, I would say, were involved in a group of people that were obstructing and interfering with ICE activities. And so, like, from my standpoint, I agree. Like, if they just show up where the detention center is and everything else, they're not blocking traffic. But these people are they are pursuing ICE. They are trying to determine where they're going. And when they get where they're going, they're making all this noise and doing all these things, not just to antagonize the officers, but also to make them aware. So if you want to go and yell and scream and everything else, like, that's one thing. But one of the things that I want to point out is that ICE agent didn't, or whoever with Border Patrol or whatever else, the first person that made contact with the three of them, they were in the street. 100% were in the street. That's why they got pushed. If you look, they went over a snowbank, which would have been off of the road. That would have been right at the corner of the roadway. So, like, from my standpoint, I think that's the problem. For me, the problem is you are injecting people who do not have the training or anything else into a situation, making a situation worse, and then complaining about the outcome. Every single person has a choice, and the choice.
Wait, so who doesn't have the training?
Your observers that are getting the observers. Like, you think that, and I think that's the problem is we give people this false sense of like, hey, you have the right to do this. You do. You have a lot of rights. Unfortunately, when you are in that situation, it's not the time to, like, that is not the time for you to exercise those rights, because it's not. I think people have put this thing of like they're protesting. No, they're interfering.
But hold on. So rights are only situational.
I'm not saying rights aren't situational.
I mean, you said that's not the time to exercise your rights.
Clearly, it is not your right to interfere with the government. It isn't 100%, because you wanted to say, I feel like people on your side wanted to say, how dare they interfere with the certification of, so the function of government. They could have done it another day. They could have done a lot of things on January 6th and just decided to do it. But we decided, which I don't disagree with, like, okay, on this date, we are going to certify that the election results, that's a function of government. Another function of government is to stand as an enforcement arm of the executive branch, and that's what these guys are doing. And like, you have untrained people out there standing in the middle of the road, chasing ICE around, doing all these different things, and it's not a simple like a protest. It is interfering. So, like, and I think that's what people lose in the whole conversation is there are several decisions. Like, if you want to talk about like, hey, I think ICE needs to change their tactics, they need to do this. That's one thing, but we can't come in here and say like, hey, they weren't interfering, when absolutely, when you're part of a group, if you're part of a group chat and they're going like, hey, the ICE agents are here, let's hurry up over here. They're in the midst of an operation. You show up on scene and you create chaos. That is interference 100%. And so, like, you don't have the right. That is not a right. The right, we have to, and that's one of the things I think people forget is like, in a democracy, there are still rules. Your right to free speech can make me mad and everything else, but like at some point, like I have to acknowledge, like, you do have the right to say that. Where the problem comes is that both of us think we have the same right. And at some point, somebody has to referee like what that right looks like. And what we have is we have the Constitution to go by and all these other supporting documents. And like, from my standpoint, one of the biggest problems we're having in Minnesota is people are getting a mixed message. You have local leaders that are saying, ICE, this is an invasion, this is that, and you have the right to do this. You don't have the right to obstruct. You don't have the right to interfere. The reason
you have the right to observe.
You do. But the moment you step off that sidewalk and interfere with traffic and interfere, like, but it's just not just observing. Like, you can actually hear the whistles, and it's fine for you to like extract like the piece that's most beneficial. But the fact is, this guy was part of a group of people that's what they did. Like, that's fine that you believe that. But if you make a decision to do that and you arrive in a confrontation with law enforcement, and then you have a gun on you, like there's a good chance something bad is going to happen. It looks bad.
Okay, so
100%
let's circle back real quick to this individual. We'll come back to overall, because I think there's an overarching conversation that we're having that we can wrap, or we can follow up with down the road. But let's get back to Alex Pretti here. So I think everything about this was wrong. I think in every way ICE was in the wrong here, or CBP, the officers. From what I see, yes, sure, he was in the road. Okay, he's filming. He has his camera in his hand. His other hand is empty. And where I think a compounding factor in this, because it happened with Renee Good, immediately when one video was out, Kristi Noem came out and called her a domestic terrorist. Trump put some tweet out about this, that, and the other, essentially parroting the same domestic terrorist. She's an awful person, whatever. This one comes out, and Bavino, the Customs and Border Patrol guy, and Noem again come out and say, oh, he was high-capacity magazine weapon, brandishing it with the intent to inflict maximum harm on ICE agents, when there is no indication of that whatsoever. Having his gun on his 6 o'clock holster behind him, like the entire video of every angle, you never see his hand go to his gun ever. He's got his phone in one hand. He's got his other hand up blocking pepper spray. He's grabbing the lady that gets pushed over to try and help her up. And then, so like every step along the way, he's in the road. Sure. You want to give him a ticket for jaywalking? Awesome. Hit him up afterwards. Give him a ticket for jaywalking. But the ICE agent, the CBPD guy,
not what he was doing. He was obstructing and he was interfering.
He got in the way of a civilian's car driving by.
You don't get to pick and choose like how it's applied. The fact is he is interfering, like based on what our earlier conversation was, which is law enforcement has a function. They go into a certain area, and like we are in agreement. The purpose of it's not to protest. It is to interfere. It is to alert people that they do not feel like should be removed from this country, or by people they don't feel like belong in their city, and they are doing everything they can to track these guys and figure out where they're going and interfere. They don't just like happenstance upon this. Like they make a conscious decision.
No, absolutely. It's a targeted effort. It's coordinated amongst the community to.
It's not a community. It is not a community.
It's Minnesota.
It is not. You can't call, like, you can call it an organization, but like it's not a community. It's not. This. I think that's one of the things is like we use words of like this community. No, it's a group of people who have decided that ICE doesn't belong here, and we are going to do everything we can to interfere with what they're doing. It's not like I just think that like what it is that they are trying to bully their way like they did during the George Floyd riots. And unfortunately, they've run up against an immovable force, which is the federal government, who's saying, you are not going to do this again. This is not going to happen. We are not going to allow this to turn into some kind of like beat the law enforcement up and everything else. And I think that's what's missed is like you can't pick and choose. In my opinion, you can't pick and choose like, okay, if law enforcement does the exact same thing here, it's okay because I believe in what they're doing, but here it's not. And I'm not just talking about your side. I think some of these Second Amendment folks that are saying like, well, he should be allowed to carry it. No, that's a dumb decision. Why would I be surprised? Like, honestly, like if I go into the woods without blaze orange, dressed like a deer, and somebody shoots me, like what does that tell me? Like that was a bad life decision on my part, you know? Like
it tells you make a pretty good deer.
I don't. But what I'm saying is like you. That's what people I think continue to forget is like they want to just grab like, okay, well the video showed this. Well, guess what? Like you do things. We all react to things differently. And I think if you put yourself in a stressful situation, you might think you're going to react a certain way, but it's totally different when you're in the midst of it. So we want to break down.
Like, this is to me, we are at the precipice of something happening. Either stuff's going to get worse, or cooler heads are going to prevail. And I genuinely believe right now, the smartest thing to do for this whole situation, and this is not me from the left saying, the protesters win, down with the government or whatever. This is me saying the smartest thing for the safety of everyone, in my opinion, would be for the federal government to pull ICE and Customs and Border Patrol out of Minneapolis for a brief period of time, at minimum, for everyone to catch their breath, take a second to de-escalate things. Because at the end of the day, if you're looking at to de-escalate a situation, if I were to invite you over, or if I were to come over to your house and we're having this conversation, you get upset and you start calling me names and throwing stuff, and I stay put, I'm in your space. And if I stay and I keep antagonizing you and things escalate, I am the one that has the ability to leave the house. That's not my home. I don't live there. I can separate myself from that position. These Minnesotans live in Minneapolis. They can't leave Minneapolis. ICE can leave Minneapolis. And so in this situation, for the safety of the ICE agents, for the safety of the community, and for the peace of mind, for everyone to just take a breath, I think the smart move would be to take a step back.
Okay, so a couple things. First is, I agree with initially, like, this is their city. It's not their neighborhood. They're going into, they are actively putting themselves in the middle of an operation. So like,
but some of those people, it is their neighborhood. Like, someone lives in those houses. Someone works at those buildings.
I understand that, but like, you can't. To me, you can't say, okay, well, he was in his neighborhood. Well, no, that's not your neighborhood. Like, you chose to be there to interfere. Like, you did, like 100%. The ICE agents are going. Huh?
Who decides the neighborhood? Like, am I only allowed to be aware of what's on my street, or am I only allowed to be aware of what's on this half of Winchester? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just
but what you're saying, like, for me, I struggle with, you're saying, like, using your analogy of, like, I have a choice to leave. Well, these agents don't have a choice. What they're doing is they're following the instructions of their leadership, and their leadership. That's
what I mean, though, is they can be removed. The citizens that live in Minneapolis can't, because that's where their house is. That's where their job is. So, like, Vino and Nome can pull them back, stage them in, I don't know, another town in Minnesota that I only know 2 towns in Minnesota. It's like St. Paul and Minneapolis.
Well, then I have a counter proposal.
Yeah.
How about ICE give a list to Minnesota and say, here are these people. You have 30 days to turn these people over to ICE. If you haven't, we're coming back.
I would even go so far as, this is where I think I will 100% agree with you on this one. And I think it should have been the solution from the beginning, which is, and I think that's part of the frustration that my side has, is they're saying, again, they're coming in for the worst of the worst, but we don't know who any of these people are. They're not giving any data to show that they are. But I think you are 100% correct that if ICE said, hey, Minneapolis PD, here's a list of 30 names of individuals that we know have a violent criminal record and are illegal immigrants, and we believe them to be in your city at these addresses. Can we work together to get them, or can you get them and provide, get them to us? I think that type of communication and cooperation from the beginning would have prevented all of this. But because it was, again, for me, I think it is political theater that the higher ups wanted to put Governor Walz in his place, because he is the Democrat former VP candidate, went against JD Vance and Trump and all this. And I think they wanted to send ICE in as a show of force, that we're doing this regardless of what you say. We don't like your sanctuary city. And they came in hot. If I come kicking in your door, you invite me over, or don't invite me over, but you know, I want to come hang out at your house and I just show up, like it's going to be contentious. And so I think if from the beginning there was more clear, determined, or more defined list of people, or
but they do have that defined list. One of the reasons why ICE agents are having to go find these people is because they're not holding them. They're not holding them in the jail. So like the first thing that
also not just like that. That's my point is that they have the list, but then they're going through parking lots and just asking anyone who's brown if they have their papers. They detained I think it was in New York. They detained a New York police officer.
All right. So here's a simple solution. Believe it or not, simple solution. I don't disagree that could be happening. But again, think about this. Based on what you're saying is like if the federal government would have just asked, they did ask them. They said, we want you to enforce immigration. We want you to tell us if there's somebody that's wanted in your jail. We want you to share that information. Go ahead. So we want you to share that information. We want you to tell us, hey, these 10 people, here's a crazy concept that nobody's thought about. In Minnesota right now, let's say if there's 3,000 agents, is that give or take what they're saying?
What I've heard, yeah.
Okay, so average arrest takes 2 agents, right? Plus, like a non-hostile arrest, like to go to the jail to pick them up, to do all these different things. If the state of Minnesota and Minneapolis would just say, hey, here is this number of people, then instead of those agents going out there and looking for work, they already have it. They're in the jails. They're already in their system. The fact is Minneapolis PD, I guarantee, has a database of people they've contacted. And instead of randomizing things, they could provide and cooperate and actually go after the worst of the worst instead of leaving it. And the same thing for it is completely, for me, a local leader to say, fuck ICE, get the fuck out, whatever. Like, to me, what that does is that creates conflict. And so, like, from my standpoint, it would be a lot better, but they won't do it because, like, they didn't do it when all that rioting was held with George Floyd. Like, they just let them run, just like they did in Portland. Here's the issue. The issue is local law enforcement is best suited to do local law enforcement. So, like, they have the initial contact. That's the whole concept of law enforcement is local agencies are contacted with the community. They have a closer bond with them and everything else in most cases. And so, like, how much better would it have been if the Minneapolis Police Department would have gone out there and provided the perimeter for the ICE agents, be a partner with? But that's the problem, is they don't want to be a partner with. What they want to do is they want to piss and moan about, like, well, the federal government's doing this, just ignore what we're doing. Funny thing, and this is what, like, this is my wild card, is I want to read something to you. I know we talked about it earlier, but, like, from my standpoint, one of the things that I think is the most interesting, and I used your information from it. I just want you to, because the Second Amendment, the whole thing about the Second Amendment, we've got people on the Second Amendment side, they're like, this guy had every right, he had this, he had this. But again, that's education from a standpoint of, yes, you have a right to do that. Just like I have a right to work in a capacity. But I also realize, like, hey, I don't look official. So, like, when somebody official shows up, I defer to them. One of the things I will say about this kid is, well, he's 30 some years old, but kid is, like, he had an opportunity to just stay with that lady, but he didn't. He went back after the agent. But I digressed. It goes back to what we're talking about as far as making a good life decision. It talks about recently a coalition of 17 Democratic state attorney generals, this was in 2024, including those from Minnesota, Illinois, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and the District of Columbia, filed a brief in January 2024 with the United States Court of Appeals in the Ninth Circuit. The brief argued in support of state authority to restrict or prohibit concealed carry of firearms at events involving political speech, such as political rallies, protests, and demonstrations. So it's really hard for the Attorney General in Minnesota to say, well, he's exercising his rights. No, you filed a brief in 2024 saying he shouldn't have had a concealed weapon. So, like,
but saying that something should be changed, but he's saying he exercised his rights because he had his right. That brief wasn't enacted. That brief wasn't made a law or made an adjustment or an amendment. It was, that would be like me saying, like, you're saying, hey, we should, when we go on our next trip, we should try and eat better and not stop at McDonald's. And I'm like, oh, I want McDonald's. So you get a cheeseburger. I go, oh, no, you can't eat a cheeseburger because you said you didn't want to eat at McDonald's. It's like, well, we're here and I didn't agree to it. So
I'm not
saying
the
idea.
What I'm saying is it is extremely hypocritical for the Attorney General from Minnesota to file a brief saying we think we should prohibit these items, and then act all shocked that somebody. So, like, to me, he's just proven the point. He felt like it was important enough to take away, like you said, a right to carry, a Second Amendment right. Mm-hmm. He's legally allowed. He has legal ownership of a concealed weapon. But what they're saying is these type of events are not the places to carry a firearm. So they tried to do something proactive and prohibit it. So how is it that if we prohibit them, that because I am of the opinion that, like, that Kyle Rittenhouse kid, that part of it, was that in Minnesota or where was it? I can't even remember.
That was Illinois.
Okay, but either way,
I'm glad you brought him up because I was going to say, like, if we want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, like, from my standpoint, like, that was a poor life decision. Like, it worked out for him, didn't work out for the other person. But, like, that's
the thing. So, like, that's where, if we're talking about, like, the hypocrisy of things, and I get your point of a group of AGs being like, hey, we should limit that, don't bring guns to these certain types of events that can become contentious. I don't disagree with that idea. I think it has good value. It has good principle behind it. But it's that aspect too of, if we're going to look at the hypocrisy of things, you have everyone, I'm seeing it, people from the right going, this guy shouldn't have had a gun. If he hadn't brought a gun, it wouldn't be an issue, this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, 2-3 years ago, Kyle Rittenhouse was the hero of the right and 2A, being brought on every news program, every talk show, did a whole, like, essentially what seemed to be just like around the country tour, because he had his mom take him out of his house, drive him to a different location with an AR-15 to show up at a protest of people that he was not on the same side as. And then he ended up shooting 3 people. And he's the hero of Fox News and whatnot back then. Like, I remember, where we worked, it was on every TV every day for a while. I saw him in multiple interviews. And now this guy Kyle had that gun across his chest out, obviously, because it's a rifle. You can't really conceal carry a, 24-inch long rifle or however long they are. This dude had a 9mm in his holster on his back, on his 6 back here. He didn't touch it. He was disarmed, which is, I think, a violation of his right. And what's very interesting, so this is, I'm going to tangent a little bit, because this is now like a conspiracy theory-ish thing that's come out. If you've watched the video, when it gets to the part where he gets shot, you hear a shot, pop, and then there's like a half-second pause, and then it's pop, 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 pop. I think like 8 or 10 shots go off, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a theory, and it's backed up pretty well. Another conservative buddy of mine actually made me aware of it, that some people from one of these angles, obviously when you slow it down, slowing it down doesn't indicate real time, but slow it down. And what you see is, so it's a SIG P320, which I guess notoriously have like shoddy, like not the best safety mechanisms to the point where like you can drop them and they'll just go off. Like it's not a very safe gun. So the theory that this buddy presented me was, you see this guy run in, hands empty. You see Alex's shirt get pulled up. You can see the holster. You see him grab the gun and pull. And so that first pop, when he pulls it around, because you see him turn and go to like scamper away, I guess to get the gun out of the situation. But you see his hand, from my opinion, he is not having good trigger safety control, whatever it's called. Like his fingers are all over the trigger. And you see that gun look like it goes off. Like you see it jerk, like it fired. And so to me, and again, you know, he brought this to my attention. I looked into it. I kind of believe it, that the first shot that was fired was from Alex's gun. When this dude disarmed him and went to run, he pulled the trigger and shot the ground, and that's spooked the other guys, who then said gun and shot the guy. So like, I think if they do a proper investigation, which hopefully they will, I would not be surprised to see that what happened was the dude that disarmed him inadvertently fired Alex's weapon, that then caused the chain reaction response of the other officers shooting Alex.
So let me ask you this, based on that information, is the agent that pulled the trigger in response to that gun going off, is he responsible?
No.
So who is ultimately
the agent that disarmed him improperly and inadvertently pulled the trigger? He would be the catalyst for the death of this individual.
So
we can also debate on, was 10 shots enough once the dude, excuse me.
Well, I think the thing to look at is that
I think this was bad across the board, like just period.
Well, but again, one of the things that I think law enforcement does not do a good job with is prevention. Like I think we are slow to change how we do things. I think we if you look at the way law enforcement is done, we've introduced a lot of technology, but we still do things basically the same way. Which is just our presence and all that. And like, don't get me started about prevention. Like, well, a mass shooting happens, 200 officers show up, but they won't assign 1 or 2 officers in an area to do prevention type work. They just won't do it, you know? And so, you know, obviously I have a problem with that from my standpoint, but from one of the other things is, in situations like that, I think it's really easy to blame people who react. And so I think we agree that they're based on what you just said, which I've heard the same thing, and that it does make more sense that like you hear that first pop, and that is when you hear the word gun. You don't hear gun until you hear that first pop. So I think you likely are onto something. I can't say with 100. I don't think anybody can.
I mean, I'm not saying with 100.
But again, I think one of the problems with cameras is it does not allow the perspective of the officers, because that's one of the things that they do in a violent encounter is you've got physical evidence, which obviously in this case is going to be the individual that was shot, the firearms that were used by the agents that pulled the trigger, all video and everything else. And like, but you also have each one of those officers having to do a report on like, well, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Like, I want you to articulate. And I'm 100% sure every one of those agents was trying to gain, like, if you look at it, they're trying to gain control. A lot of times what happens in those pig piles is you're almost working against each other, because and again, like you have all these other things that are going on, you know, you got these whistles going on, you got that, you're worried about somebody coming in. And so I think that's one of the problems. One of the problems is that we say, hey, we're gonna increase pressure in the pressure cooker on these agents, and then we're gonna act like we're surprised when they react to something that any one of us with training would react to. I hear a gunshot, I see them struggling. Yeah, it probably is going to happen. So
sure, but
like,
my question to that exact point, if I may, is why then, you know, ICE is in this community or this city.
Mm-hmm.
The people there are unhappy. They don't want them there. We can agree or disagree on their reasonings or this, that, and the other. But why are we now in a position where we are holding untrained, emotional civilians to a higher level of standard and expectation than we are trained federal agents who have passed all these qualifications with firearms, passed all these training procedures, passed all this stuff to be where they are, hopefully, and yet they're allowed to react emotionally or based on this, that, and the other. But if a civilian gets mad and gets in a cop's face, oh, well, he shouldn't have been there. Like, to me, that's that's where I think so much of the frustration from my side of things as a civilian is that we are seeing time and time again these videos. One came out not too long ago of 6 dudes pinning this guy down, and one of the officers is standing there holding him and just kneeing this guy in the face on the ground 3 or 4 times. This video with Alex, he gets 5 or 6 or 7 dudes dogpiling him. He's hunched up in the fetal position. You've got the dude that pepper sprayed him now using the pepper spray can and smashing him in the head. And people say, oh, well, he was trying to get up. No, he was pulling his hands up to protect his head. The dude was a VA ICU nurse. Like, he immediately went, when they pushed the lady, he immediately went to care. He went to render aid. When he was getting dogpiled, he was protecting his vital organs. And so
that is your opinion based on the video. That doesn't necessarily mean that's, because I didn't, like, I think that's the problem. The problem is that I think you're like, I don't disagree, but I also think like he had a chance to continue caring for that woman, but he chose to like engage the agent.
But that's the thing, is he didn't. They pulled him away from her. He's literally in the one video. So she gets pushed down. He turns around, goes to her, and you see that he's grabbing her arm to try and stay with her. And those agents are pulling him back into the street.
Right. But at some point he goes towards, like, without them pulling, he's still engaged.
Once they push her, he doesn't engage.
I'll simplify it. What would have happened if he was just laid on the ground? Like, done nothing, put his hand straight out to the side and laid down.
May have still been shot.
But that's not what he did.
Here's the thing.
The people,
he protected himself because he was getting hit in the head with a can of mace.
Because he wasn't, again, if your hands are out to the side and you're complying, okay, you get, like, let's say worst case scenario, you get hit in the head, but you live. And then you have all this video of everything else to like protect you and to get
that's
money
easier.
Huh?
Monday morning quarterback. Yeah, it's easy to say here, lay with your arms out. If you get hit in the head, yeah, it's going to hurt, but you'll be like super easy to do in the moment with adrenaline. Instinct is going to say, we talk about it at work, where, if you get, don't yank if you have an injury situation because it makes things worse. But then people who are still, been doing our job for years and years and years, it's still just a natural instinct to do that. And they end up with an injury. I'm not
disagreeing, but I'm saying, like, we can't just apply, like, okay, well, he had the training, he had again, the only people that were there because they were told to be there were the ICE agents and the Border Patrol guys. Like, they don't get to pick and choose. And so from my standpoint, if you are in a situation where you continue to see the same car over and over again and all these different things, what I'm saying is like, here's a simple solution to anybody that's in Minnesota. If you see an ICE agent, stay on the sidewalk, get out of their way. It is a simple solution, but that's the problem, is people want to introduce themselves into a violent situation, which is arrest or have a tendency to be violent. People are throwing frozen water bottles at these agents and everything else. Why in the world would you, like, I agree with you 100%. Like, it's a horrible idea. Like, I don't think we should celebrate somebody that voluntarily goes into a hostile area, has to use their firearm. We shouldn't celebrate that. That was a dumb decision. His mom, dumb decision. Like, I would never send my kid, like, hey, here's a rifle, go over there and see what you can get into. Like, it's ignorant. And in the same way, in my opinion, that's ignorant. That is not, like, that's not to be celebrated. I understand that he survived a violent incident, What I'm saying is, if you want to prevent the violent incident, stay away from the ICE operations. If you have a problem with it, like,
so I think this gets to that umbrella point that I brought up earlier, because I think where it is now becoming very, where the conversation becomes very complicated, is we are now having the debate or the conversation between legality and morality. You are 100% correct that in most of these instances that we've seen, ICE and CBPD may 100% be, as much as I might disagree, I don't know the law. I'm just some Joe Schmo that you met at work. I'm not a cop. They might be well within their legal parameters to do every single thing they've done so far. Absolutely. That doesn't make it right. It makes it legal, but morally, I look at it and I go, if you take the situation in Minneapolis, you pull it out and you drop it in, Caracas or Baghdad or Sydney or Seoul, South Korea, or take it out and put it in any other city, non-American, would we be defending their federal agents with the same vigor morally that we are ours? Because I look at it and go, yes, they may be well within their legal rights to do what they're doing, but morally it feels wrong. Watching 6 people dogpile someone and knee him in the face feels wrong. Seeing 2 Americans get killed because an officer was in imminent threat of his life, when it's the George Orwell 1984 of the government told you not to believe what you see with your own eyes. I'm
Right.
looking at something, and we have 2 different perspectives, 2 different backgrounds, so we view it differently. But I sit there and go, morally, my soul hurts. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't look like how things are supposed to go. And
So
legally, it could be fine.
So where is the morality when you have billions of dollars of aid that you as a taxpayer, I as a taxpayer, sent to a group of people to that this money was sent for a particular purpose to help people, and all they did was build their own empire. And
Morally, I feel the exact same way. Like the people that
okay,
took money that was supposed to go to feeding the hungry, helping the poor, helping veterans and the homeless, and used it for the dude that just got busted in California for like, what was it, like 7 million or 70 million something dollars of fraud. Like, he's a piece of shit. He's a scumbag. Like, those people need to be prosecuted and found, because that is morally, not just legally, but morally abhorrent. And so, and again, like this all started with finding fraud in Minnesota, and we aren't even talking about fraud in Minnesota anymore because Americans are dying.
well, no, 2 Americans have died
that's too many, in my opinion.
You're exactly
for an immigration and fraud.
But again, if we're going to go on the morality and we're going to go on the, like, how many people have died, like, from my standpoint, one of the biggest problems is that we have to pick. I am a huge believer, and believe it or not, I actually read a book that was written by a guy that be right up your alley. And it was talking about the morality of capitalism as it relates to immigration. And one of his points is that capitalism expands because it doesn't have like, basically the United States, because of decisions we've made, trade deals that we've made, have created the problem that we have in immigration. And like, I'm not educated enough to know whether that's the case, but I do think that's an interesting view of things, is because it is true in a true market of capitalism, it should work that, like, the more you produce, the more you make. But that's not how the system works. And I think what I wish, if I could be in a situation, is that instead of having discussions like this, I would rather, like, and I know we have to have these discussions because I do think it's important for people to hear both sides and see that, like, you have a conversation. And I would hope, I know in talking to you, it's given me the opportunity to open up new areas of looking at it from a different direction, because
Same.
like I said, it's just, it is helpful, and it is helpful. Like, I might not understand it, I might not agree with it, but, like, it is another perspective. My perspective isn't the perspective. It is a perspective.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I think we're both in agreement in is that the people at the very top financially that benefit the most from what the United States stands for and what we stand for as far as a financial giant, stock market, all those different things. I can't imagine, because I think about the people that are funding both sides of it, the ones on the left that are funding stuff, the ones on the right, they're funding discourse. They really are. And they're funding discourse, like, to me, to keep people from ignoring the fact of, like, part of the reason why people, I think, are so pissed off is because, like, everything costs more money. Everything, all these different things that we have in our lives, like, it's more expensive to live. We aren't getting ahead. We're falling behind. And then we look at it and we see something like that. And exactly what you said, from a morality standpoint, we're like, holy smokes, like, the government that we have is, like, out here beating up innocent people on the side of the road. And, like, this world is crazy. It's horrible. I don't think we slow down and think about the fact of, like, no matter what you view of immigration, if I think we are in agreement that the top 1% of this country are making good money. They're making a lot of money, and they're making it on the backs of immigrants and citizens. And I think if we can, if we can just pause for a minute and go, okay, from my standpoint, when I look at it, I go, yeah, we can get distracted with this event, or we can look at, like who's pulling the strings. And I think there are evidence on both sides that there are people that are influenced decision makers on both sides of the political aisle that are beneficial, not to the average American citizen, and certainly not for immigrants. It's to benefit, like, themselves. And so, like, from my standpoint, I wish that people would take more time and go, this is, it's not a distraction. It's never a distraction when people lose their lives. But I think, like, what I would like to do, like, just what we talked about, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a great idea because I thought of it. I'm being sarcastic, but, like, I do think it would be amazing if these sanctuary cities say, President Trump, give us a list of your 100 worst of the worst, and let us prove good faith, and we will deliver these 100 people to you.
Yeah.
Like, and
I think that's like the left of it is sticking with this idea of morality, is that, and what we started with this on episode 1 of us talking, which is, like, the belief of just helping people. So, like, to me, the morality when it comes to immigrant, show me the 1,000 worst of the worst that you want to get rid of. Morality, it is not the 25-year farmer who's supporting a family and has done nothing wrong. If you look at, healthcare, it's like the morality is, yes, we should be giving free healthcare to every veteran for forever, whatever they need. Healthcare for the people that need it. It needs to be affordable. But the morality of that is, okay, then we need to do something about pharmacy and insurance companies that are, it is immoral to kick someone off because they have a genetic pre-existing condition that they don't have any control over, and insurance just doesn't want to pay for it. Like, that is immoral to me. And so that, I think, is so much of what the left comes at it from, is this standpoint of, legally it might be fine, financially it might not be beneficial, but overall, like, does it feel good at the end of the day? Like, do you feel like you're being a better person by taking these things away, by tackling these people in the street? And I think when you look at places like Minneapolis, you're at a point where the common citizenry have had enough. They're just fed up with it. And this is to go back to the point I made, like, this is where the cooler heads need to prevail type thing, because and I made the joke to a friend of mine when I saw that Tim Walz sent in the National Guard with donuts and coffee. And my joke was, Mom and Dad got back from a ski trip and saw that the kids had been fighting all weekend, and they said, okay, calm down. The parents are home. Let's figure this out. Because it does, to me, just feel like you have two bickering partners fueling each other. And until someone steps in and says, hey, you go to your corner, it's the referee of a UFC fight. Those fighters keep going until someone pulls them off. You go to your corner, you go to your corner, we're taking a break. I think, to your point, like, it absolutely has the ability, ICE could go, hey, we're going to take ICE out of Minneapolis. could you, on the request of help us find these 100 people, these criminal worst of the worst. Like, there's a way to go about this where both sides save face. ICE and Bavino and Nome get to have their immigration crackdown, and Minneapolis gets to look like, hey, I did something for the people of my city and got this antagonistic force out. Because like I sit there and just go, like, to say that ICE isn't being antagonistic and it's all just response to protesters is just disingenuous, in my opinion.
I mean, we can dig into that at another time, but I think I will wrap it up with this. Is like, I think you feel like that, and I think the majority of the people in your party feel like that. Unfortunately, the leadership on both sides don't feel like that. The top 1% doesn't feel like that, because they are actually sponsoring chaos on both sides. They're sponsoring high volume of enforcement. And then we have the other side that is demonizing the people that this side. And so like it's much better if like the minions underneath are fighting. And I think that's the difference is that you have two really bad parents that are coming home, and they want to see them fight because they want to have a night off. And I think that's the problem. I think the problem is on both sides of the aisle, we have leadership that are more interested in padding their own pockets and making more money for themselves than they are of actually representing the people that they've been elected to represent. And they're more interested in like saying those one-liners to get the other side. And I just think, like you said, I think it's disingenuous. I know you're talking about my side, but I mean,
it goes both ways.
Yeah, I think it's disingenuous on both sides to try to act like, hey, we're trying to. No, you're not. Like, you're trying to keep the pot.
There are definitely politicians and people on my side that are like, oh, we're doing this for the poor or whatever, like because they get the headline or whatever, and then behind closed doors, no, they vote the other way, or they do, because like people just don't look at how folks vote. Like the example I've used is like, oh, the right is for the military, and then you look at how they have voted down bills that exclusively support veterans and whatnot. But for the wrap up part of this, I'll leave it with the view of the people with one of the best movies of all time, Men in Black 1. Tommy Lee Jones saying, "A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it." And that's the thing. If the politicians can keep us in a dumb, panicky group, if the big players can keep us in a dumb, panicky group, we care more about what's going on around us, and we don't take the time to remember that each one of us is a person. Because individually, we are smart.
100%. I think
that's where we as people are so easy to manipulate as a group.
But I think the reason we're easy to manipulate is because what you said, which is we have a sense of morality. The people that are pulling the strings, they have a sense of what can pad their pockets further. And I think that's the difference. So anyway, I appreciate you coming on, buddy. And
yes, sir.
You have a good weekend or
good
a good
week. Stay warm.
Stay warm. It's probably cold there too. So